So in a previous video I talked about how chunks can be created from the module graph, but in this video I would like to highlight some problems that can occur when chunks are created, or to be more specific, after chunks have been created. So the problem is in this video is about duplicated chunks, and for that I have prepared a small example, which is this one. So we have this index file, which is also the entry file of this little project, and as you see we are importing the same module, which is lib.js, which only exports two different methods, but in index we are importing the same module under two different chunks, because as you see here we are providing the webpack chunk name magic plugin, magic comment, which will define the name of the created chunk. And as a result, if we run this this project as is, we should see that we end up with two different chunks. So main is the main chunk, which has this index.js as the entry module, but we also see two different chunks, which are this one that can be seen here, chunk 1 and chunk 2 respectively. But if we take a look at chunk 1, we can see that is the same as chunk 2. We can also see the size, that it is the same. And yeah, basically that's the problem. For that, Webpack has an optimization option, which is not surprisingly called merge duplicate chunks. All we have to do is to set up to true, and if we run this project again, we should see that we only end up with one chunk, which is essentially what we would expect, because although we have imported the same module under two different chunks, in the end we are just providing a different name for the same thing, so we wouldn't expect to have two different instances of the same module. What I want to show you next is how this can be done. For this, of course, there is a plugin, which is merge duplicated chunks plugin. This is a source code, but in this video I will only like to apply this algorithm that is being used here on the diagram that I have prepared. So let's see. The diagram should be here. This is the module graph, the simple one. It is a simple one. It all starts with an index file, which is the entry point. So this will mean a chunk. This will result into a chunk. From that is what we've learned in a previous video. And in this file we are importing the same module under two different chunks. So this import 1 will create one chunk with the name of chunk 1, and this import function will create another chunk under the name chunk 2. Here we have the resulted chunk graph, and these are the chunks that have been created. Let me also add a name for that, chunk graph. Okay, now we can better see the problem. We have two different chunks that are essentially the same. The only difference, which is not very significant, is their name, but this chunk is actually redundant, and in a real world scenario it can translate to other problems, other performance delays, latency, and stuff like that. So we want to get rid of this chunk. How can be done, and how Webpack does it? So first of all, this will be the algorithm at a higher level. There are some edge cases that are covered by this algorithm, but I wouldn't like to go to approach them in this video, but there will be a great topic for later videos. So first of all, it will loop through, or let's say for each chunk, oops. So for each chunk, for each module of chunk, it will get other for each possible duplicate chunk of, and this is a very interesting part. So it will take each chunk into account, then for each chunk it will get their module, and for each module webpack will get all the other chunks that this module is part of. So for each possible duplicated chunk of other chunks of let's say module get chunks. So this module get chunks will get all of the chunks that this module is part of, and then what follows is the logic, which we'll get into in a minute. But let's apply this pseudocode to this chunk graph, and let's take this one because this will be the most relevant for our example. Chunk will be chunk 1, then for each module of chunk 1 it will fetch then it will take each module of chunk 1, which is lib.js, and now for each possible duplicated chunk, which is what I've highlighted here, of this module get chunks. In this case, module is lib1, and the chunks will be, in this case, chunk 1 and chunk 2. These are the chunks of lib.js. Let's do it like that. Then the first condition will be that, let's also put chunk 1 here so that it is a bit more clear what we're doing. So I will move this a bit down. Okay, so we are at this point, possible duplicated chunk. The first check that webpack will do is, first of all, that if chunk is the same as possible dup chunk, then it will continue. But if it is not the case, so it will be the case for chunk 1 in this case. I think I should choose a different color, let's say yellow. So in this case, chunk 1 will be the same as chunk 1 here, so it will not be taken into account. But then we have chunk 2. Let's take chunk 2 into account. Then the next check will be, okay, how many modules are in this chunk? Because we know for sure that lib.js is part of this chunk, but if this chunk 2, also has other modules, or at this point, let's say it like that, if chunk 2 has a different number of modules, let's say that it will also have, it could also have a.js, then at this point these two chunks cannot be merged. So the next check will be if number of modules of chunk is different than number of modules of possible duplicated chunk, then it will also continue. So this will be the second condition of this. But if we get at this point, then this chunk let's say chunk 2 could be considered as a possible duplicated chunk. And basically in this situation, chunk 2 is actually a duplicated chunk. And what webpack will do next is to essentially delete this chunk and ensure that all of these modules are part of this chunk. So in this case, we are on the happy path. But there's also another case that I would like to highlight, which is, let's say that a.js is also part of chunk 1, but chunk 2 has another module, which is b.js. And in this case, we are going to fulfill these two conditions for this one here and this one here, because let's say that the first module is lib.js, so we are still in this situation. And at the end of this, chunk 2 will be considered as a possible duplicate. Let's put it here. Okay. But let's say let's bring our attention back to this part. It will take each module of chunks, so each module of chunk 1. a.js follows next. So let me lower this part opacity, and now the module is a.js. So it will take all of the chunks this module is part of, in this case it is only part of chunk 1, but somewhere in the algorithm there is this check which checks if so this part will take all of the possible chunks of so this part will take all of the possible duplicated chunks and will check if this current module A is not part of them, and if it is not, then this chunk can no longer be considered a duplicate. So in this case, A, we have this A module. It will check it against chunk 2. Does A belong to chunk 2? In this case, no. It is chunk B that belongs to chunk 2, not chunk. It is module B that belongs to chunk 2, not module A. So in this case, chunk 2 will not be considered a duplicate anymore, and basically we will end up with 3 chunks in the end. But this was just an edge case, an edge scenario. If we come back to our initial example where we take this module out, these modules out, in this case the algorithm will succeed in finding 2 different chunks that are essentially the same, and in the end it will get rid of this one here, and the bundle, the resulted bundle will only contain these 2 chunks. Okay, I know this has been a bit intense, this part, but I think this was the most interesting part of this plugin, so I thought it would be worth trying to explain it. I'm not sure I fully succeeded, but you are always free to read this code. It's very clever in my opinion, and there are a lot of knowledge bits that can be found there. Right, that was it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.